we're going to chat some more about this opening match with the United States against Ireland. Let's take a look at who was starting at the time and just sort of give our reactions to that. Alyssa Nair getting the honors for game one. Crystal Dunn, Becky Sauerbrunn, Naomi Girma, and Emily Fox to round out the back line. Lindsay Horan, Andy Sullivan, and Rose Lavelle for the midfield, and Mallory Swanson, Alex Morgan, and Sophia Smith to complete the starting 11. Honestly, when I saw this drop, Lisa, I was like, chef's kiss. I love it. I like it. I think every game that goes by, we start to see perhaps the ideal starting 11 for this team. And I was very excited to see Emily Fox slot into the outside back position. And, Lavelle, Horan, and Sullivan getting that start with each other again. We talked a little bit about that injury with Swanson and how maybe devastating or near catastrophic that could be for the front line that has been together for many, many months. And they were the one line that you sort of knew was collected, gathered, and complete for the World Cup. And then maybe an argument could be made maybe for this middle third. Despite some of the recent rotations within it, it has mostly been Lavelle, Horan, and Sullivan in some capacity. But when I saw this 11 drop, I liked it.
Yeah, I agree. I did too. I mean, as you said, every day we get closer, one step closer to the World Cup, and we get to see what Flacco wants as his starting 11. This was it in my eyes. This was 100%. If the World Cup started on Saturday, April 8th, this is who would have started the game in the World Cup, the group stages. Nair solidifying herself in that back line. Dunn, who has worked her way back from maternity leave with club, now with country, and in Dunn's return, we don't see the absence of Fox. And I think that shows just how important Emily Fox is to this roster, to this team, and to how Vlachmannovsky wants to play. Because Emily Fox, who had traditionally played on the left side in place of Dunn over the last year and a half, has now switched to the right side. Which I think also says a little bit about Emily Sonnet, Sofia Huerta, in whatever you want to think about it. But the fact that those players have been on the right, and now they're staying on the bench to start this game and Fox is getting rotated to the other side just speaks to what Fox can do and how this team really does want to play, because she is so versatile. She can play on the left back and the right back. She can push higher. She can push centrally, which we saw a lot of during this game. I can't wait to talk about that. But then Sauerbrunn and Girma in the center back. I mean, that's my duo. I like that duo. I like where it's going. Yes, you've still got Tierna Davidson working back into it, but I don't think Alana Cook has proved herself to be the starting center back for this team. And the caliber is just not there in competition against Girma. Girma wins out over Cook every time in my mind, and same as Sauerbrunn. So this is the center back starting duo for me, Sauerbrunn and Girma. Yeah, and then, I mean, the central midfield, that's what he wants to go with. We'll see if anything changes there. And then the front line, of course, Swanson being the one change that he will have to choose and decide about moving forward. But there was a lot to kind of talk about and break down in this first match for the United States against Ireland. And I want to hear your thoughts. I want to give mine, because there was a lot of good stuff, a lot of juicy moments in this first 90 minutes.
Well, let's also, I mean, we knew that there were only going to be 23 players available for these matches, even though 26 players were named. No Davidson, no O'Hara, no Kruger, not even dressed or available for this one. Maybe they'll get a shot in this second match. But I'm with you. I think when we previewed this game a little bit, we said that we wanted to see Girma with the start. I mentioned that at some point, I think we need to see a start alongside Davison just to see what that looks like. But Girma and Sauerbrunn was enough. I think even just narrowing that lens really on Girma in this match was massive. I thought she was like the first half MVP for me, honestly. I think if this series of games has been billed as the final set of international matches for this team before that final World Cup roster is named, then this is the game for me that just solidifies that. I think there's already been a very strong case for Girma in her short time with this team, but you have enough here, I think, to look at and say, this is a player that I need to take to the World Cup.
Mhm.
Because in this opening match, even just this opening half hour, let's talk about that for this game. Ireland
Woo.
really presenting themselves to the United States and
Okay,
saying, "Hey, we're going to the World Cup too."
I know. I love that. But I want to talk about this because Ireland came out ready to play. They were fired up. They had a game plan against the United States that worked. Shinead Farrley, Sandra, we got to talk about her. We talked about this Irish roster, and this was added on after we did our last episode. But Farley joined the national team. She was making her return to the NWSL. She then gets called up to the Irish international team for the very first time. And not only does she get her first cap, she gets her first start with this Irish side in the midfield. And Farley proving to be a piece to deal with for the United States. I mean, the Irish came out in this game and they had a game plan against the Americans. They wanted to attack them early. They wanted to put a lot of pressure on them and make it difficult for the U.S. to build out of the back. It was almost like, okay, we're going to give the back four time with the ball, but they are never going to find Swanson, Morgan, and Smith. We're going to make it incredibly difficult. It wasn't like sit back, park the bus. It was we're going to sit back, but like in the attacking end of our field. So like we're going to press, we're not going to give them any space in behind, and we're not going to allow the back line to get these services off. It was incredibly entertaining. The United States had to figure out how they were going to break down the Irish press because it was a good press. It was very organized, and the Americans had trouble building the ball up, getting it into the midfielders, getting it into Morgan, Swanson, Smith, finding their feet in the first 30 minutes of this game was incredibly difficult. It was a big middle of the field battle for the first 30 minutes because the Americans would lose it and then the Irish would try to build up. I think their midfield looked really good. It honestly benefited Ireland once the game got stretched a little bit more because they could counterattack. And there were those moments of transition that Ireland could try to get in behind and look to get shots on goal. It was great. I really liked it. I mean, I'm Irish, so it was like also fun to watch Ireland like go at the Americans. But it was because I wanted the US to be tested and I wanted them to be forced to kind of play this chess match that was quick and that was incredibly physical and really, really physical to start this game. You could tell that Ireland was ready to play.
I think I think it was that that match day one, like -1 press conference where we saw and heard that Shinead Farrley was added to the roster for Ireland, and not only was she added, she was probably going to get a start with Ireland against the United States, and it's just an absolutely incomprehensible
It's
story
awesome.
arc that we are witnessing for Shinead Farrley, and I'm just happy that we're all here for it. Honestly, just happy to be here to sort of watch this and see it unfold. And um, looking at that, looking at Ireland and their shape early in this match. Yes, credit to them executing their game plan well. But I
Mhm.
think on the United States side of things, I think this was for the team. I think it's another one of these games that you have a ton of film on to go back and look at and say, okay, here's another match where we are presented with the opposition and their game plan, and it's going to take us this kind of interesting like 20 to 35 minutes to really try and unlock exactly what it is they are presenting to us. And I think that's one of the takeaways that I left with in this first half. Obviously, the Swanson injury completely blows everything out of the water. Like your attention goes there,
Right,
your
right.
focus goes there. You're like, oh my goodness, like what is that kind of going to mean in the long run? But prior to that, let's just say even for 38 minutes
Yeah.
of that, you're like, okay, so they're getting tested on set pieces. Ireland's like, we're gonna get in there, we're gonna make sure that we test you, causing a little bit of chaos in the box, getting a little bit of physical. I mean, Katie McCabe, like,
Woo.
don't mess with the gunner, man. Like, gonna come for you on any good day. I know there were some question marks around how available already she was going to go, having picked up an injury, but
She
she
was
looked
ready.
great. She looked great against the United States. But yeah, just some difficulties I think early on in trying to unlock some things and trying to get into dangerous spaces and look lethal and look kind of like
Yeah.
threatening in front of goal. I mean, this opening goal comes off of a defender. It comes because Emily Fox was getting more central and getting more involved in the play and just lets one rip from just on top of the box and beats Rosin in the 37th minute for the opening goal in this one.
Yeah, it was almost a bit surprising. I think it caught Ireland off guard, the shot that did come from Fox, but United States was playing this shape and this structure that the first 15 minutes, Ireland made it very difficult for the US to build out of the back. They problem solved, and then we saw Germa playing. I mean, you talked about kind of woman of the match in my eyes. I know it was awarded to Fox, but Germa played tremendously. She is the one that really started to kind of play these long balls in over the top and in behind, looking for Morgan Swanson Smith on the back side and those back shoulders. So once the United States realized that, it forced Ireland to drop, which then the United States could play the ball back and around the back and their defensive side because they had a little bit more space to play with because Ireland had dropped off on the ball. And in this shape, we see Crystal Dunn, the left back for the U.S., pushing up really high and wide on the flank, occupying that space. That's normal. That's where Dunn likes to hang out. That's where we've traditionally seen it. Now, Emily Fox playing on the right outside back position, she is not staying high and wide. Instead, she is shifting completely centrally when the US has the ball. And she's almost playing as like a double six pivot with Andy Sullivan. And Haran and Lavelle are much higher, having that freedom. But to see Fox just have so much freedom on the pitch as to kind of where she can float and rotate, and centrally being another player to help swing the ball around and help be an outlet when it is so congested for Ireland and the U.S. attackers trying to get the ball. Fox becomes that outlet. And I think she talked about it post-game in an interview, probably with Melissa Ortiz, saying, like, I saw the space and I saw the opportunity. She saw it there a couple of times.
Yeah.
And it took her the third time, maybe, when she received the ball outside the 18 to say, okay, I'm going to shoot this. She dribbles, she receives the ball from her left, dribbles to her right, which opens up a little bit of a gap, and she strikes it in the corner. I mean, it's really well struck. It caught Irish off guard, and they weren't ready for it, and it finds the back of the net. Her first international goal, tremendous from this player, and really occupying the space that she needed to occupy centrally, which is different than what we've seen her do when she was on the left side.
Yeah, and I think we're talking about this goal and how it happens. It takes almost 38 minutes, for this to happen, and it happens because we have an attacking outside back paying attention to the space in front of her. Yeah, and I think even with the midfield too, I think we know how this game turns 2-0, and we'll talk about how and why. But with the Rose Lavelle in the midfielders that are kind of like that, kind of, let's just refer to them as like perhaps the ideal trio at this moment
Mm-hmm.
for the United States. But even looking at Rose Lavelle, I thought she had another great game.
Yeah, she's
But
so good.
tasked with trying to find and create and be that playmaker. But even with this goal, like, it's not just like, hey, the defender hopped on a ball and just said, let me get a foot through this ball and make it happen. No, it was Lavelle cutting back near end line,
Mm-hmm.
recycling the ball out to Guerma to Sullivan. If I think you got to maybe try to find, those small moments, and then I think silver linings within the play here. I think, yeah, of course, as you're building up to a World Cup, I think ideally you want your forwards making sure that they're feeling dangerous and lethal. But not every game is going to present itself as that. And I think all things considered, with how that first half ends, it leaves a lot of questions as to how the second half is going to look. Does this turn into a game where the team has to sort of try to compartmentalize things and get through it? I mean, we heard from a lot of these players coming out of the postgame how really kind of emotionally jarring that
Mm-hmm.
was for this team to lose Mel Swanson in the manner in which it happened. That they sort of had to kind of come together and try to just complete the game as best that they could. And for a very long time, it was a kind of a narrow scoreline that they were working with. I do like how they came out in the second half. And that's another, I think, theme that we take away from a game like this. It's like, here's an opening 20 to 30 minutes where the team has some difficulty trying to unlock the opposition's shape. And then maybe they get an opening goal late in the half. Maybe they don't, but they go in a halftime. Whatever is said in the locker room. And then the team comes out and they look fierce. And I think that's sort of what we saw again in a game like this. And I think we got to get into these substitutions because we also got to see some other faces get involved into the mix. We saw an hour substitution. We saw Shinead Farrley head off for Ireland. For the United States, we got to see Emily Sonnet and Ashley Hatch back into the mix. And then we also got to see the return of Julie Ertz in the second half of this match. And we got to talk about it. Look, Julie Ertz hasn't played in 2 years, and there were moments of the 20 minutes where she was on the pitch where it looked like she hasn't played in 2 years. And yet, exiting this game with an early header attempt on a set piece, a yellow card, and is an asset to winning the penalty kick for the go-ahead goal in this game as well. It was quite the 20 minutes.
And we predicted that in our preview of this USA versus Ireland first friendly. We talked about how we would see Julie Ertz, but 60, 75 minutes. And that's exactly what we saw around just before the 70th minute mark is when she subs on for Andy Sullivan with a few other substitutes, as you mentioned, but definitely an opportunity for Vlatko Malinovsky to see her get significant minutes, right? 20 minutes in a game is better than 10. It's better than 5. It actually allows her a chance to kind of rotate in. And as soon as she steps on the pitch, where the throw-in was for the U.S. and kind of how it works, she's the first one to touch the ball. So she checks on, and initially she's got a touch. And her first couple of passes, right, were long balls that were continuously getting intercepted. You could tell the game plan was, hey, Ertz, like, look to see if you can get it in behind to your front runners up top. Can you find Lindsay Horan? Can you get the ball to them and play quickly into them? Because that's what she was doing. And instead of just playing the simple pass back to Germa or Sauerbrunn or connecting with Lavelle in that front line. So that was clearly the game plan, which maybe threw her off a little bit, because as a player, when you step onto the pitch after 2 years of not playing, 7 months after giving birth, you need to build up your confidence a little. You have to connect passes, even if they're simple passes. You have to win a tackle, and you kind of get your mojo going. It didn't happen for Ertz initially when she stepped onto the pitch, right? I mean, I mean this in the best way. She looked rusty because she hadn't played in 2 years.
Yeah,
and it's perfectly fine and perfectly normal. She still looked better than a lot of other players that we see playing consistently. So to me, it was not at all surprising. I think it would have been way more surprising if Ertz came onto the field and looked the same way she did in the bronze medal match for the Olympics in Tokyo. That would have been scary. It's like, okay, she is actually a machine. But no, she's human. She gave birth. She had a baby 7 months ago. It's going to take her some time to get back into things. But there were still so many positives we saw from Ertz, because although her initial 4 or 5 passes into the game were intercepted, that's how the same type of sequence where she receives the ball deep and then she plays a long ball and finding a forward or a midfielder connects. That's how the penalty kick is drawn for the United States to get their second goal in this game. It's Ertz who plays the ball into Horan. It's such a great ball played in. Horan can control it with her chest just inside the box, and she gets tugged down by Diane Caldwell. And that's the ball from Ertz. It's Sandra giving a hug in this one, because that's exactly how it went. I mean, I feel bad for Caldwell, I'm not going to lie, but
I respect the center back energy and
same.
where you're like, I don't know what you're talking about. Like, there was no way I was tugging the collar and had my fingers all the way inside of the collar. It was a pretty fun moment. Obviously the friendly didn't have VAR or anything like that, but for those of us watching on a broadcast who saw like replays and things like that were like, oh yeah, that's absolutely
That's a
pen.
horse collar if I ever
Let
saw
me
one.
ask you this. Let me ask you this. When the foul happened and it's like the horse collar foul in the box, PK given, did you think Haran was going to step up and take this PK? Because we didn't see her line up over the ball initially. I think it was Lavelle at first.
Yes. I did think it was going to be Haran because that's kind of who takes these for us, right? Maybe Smith. I wouldn't have been surprised if Sophia Smith lined up over it. But Alex Morgan had been rotated out at this point, right? So that was my initial thought, right? Okay, so Morgan, no, she's not in. Hatch had just subbed in for her. So yes, it made sense for me to see Haran get this one, but it got tipped. It wasn't like a surefire goal. It got saved a little bit by the goalie and then still went in.
She got her hand on it, yeah, but there was like enough power behind it where it's
Yeah.
like it didn't matter that you got some fingertips on it because it was still in the back end of the net. But it's definitely something to maybe pay attention to. Who knows if in game 2 there will be a similar scenario where a PK is given and someone has to step up and take it. I'm curious if maybe if there's what your typical starters are in the game, like who actually takes that penalty. But I think important to note that at that point Morgan had been subbed out, so who is going to be over that. But I was curious. I did want to get your perspective and your thoughts on that, because it did hit the keeper. The keeper guessed correctly.
I know. And it was, she got a hand on it for sure, but just enough power. With Ertz coming in, right, getting the yellow card, I think a dominant yellow card from Ertz, fine. I like it. I like that kind of yellow card. She goes in for the slide tackle, doesn't get the ball at all. The other player was fined, right? Not too malicious on that end, but it was almost like Ertz kind of getting her footing back into this game. I think as the 20 minutes went on of Ertz play that we saw, she grew into it a little bit more. It was almost like the nerves calmed down, right? Imagine like the heartbeat and the nerves of that type of player. But even post game and the players over the last several days coming out and saying like, she didn't miss a beat. She did not miss a beat coming in and playing. And that's what you want to hear from the teammates of Ertz stepping in and taking this one. What about you from Ertz? Was there anything else you wanted to see from her, or was it just like a little jittery, a little rusty from her when you evaluated it?
I just wanted to see her get a run out and just sort of, I wanted to see this player look like she was just riding a bike again. Like I just wanted to see the muscle memory come into play for this player. And I think that's what I was looking for, because I knew we weren't going to see like this breakout beast mode kind of player just because of how she has had to navigate her last 2 years. I mean, just 7 months out from, giving birth to her son, and how challenging maybe that could be for mothers making their way back into form. So I wasn't looking for like, if she's not running a 40-yard dash in like 5 seconds, like it's a wrap. Like that's not the energy I had in this at all. I really wanted to see the muscle memory from Julie Ertz. And I was looking for that because I really believe that is why she's back with this team. Unfortunately, this team is rolled out with a very specific set of tactics. Andonovski has been committed to this for quite some time. We know, and I think the oppositions know at this point, when you're going up against the United States, you're going to see them in some variation of a 4-3-3, maybe at times a 4-2-3-1, but that has been like very rare in which we've seen that. And I think that delivered for me, because what we saw when Ertz came in for these 20 minutes, we saw a player where it clicked immediately, came in, slotted into that defensive 6 position, and knew when and where and how she was supposed to affect the game.
Right. And I think the fact that Lavelle wasn't rotated out initially and Haran never subbed out, I think that also helped a little bit, giving that familiarity to have 2 other players in there, that in Haran and Lavelle, that have solidified their position there to kind of keep the boat steady for Ertz, frankly. And right. And having Sauerbrunn and Germa in behind her, like it was like, let's not create too many ruffles and waves initially. Then we do see Ashley Sanchez get rotated in for Lavelle around the 80-minute mark. Nothing too crazy coming from that. I think, I know we're kind of closing out on this game and recapping it, I want to give a shout out to Sophia Smith, because in the first 30 minutes of this game, I mean, right, of course, she's on fire. She's crushing it for club, but we haven't seen her for country yet this year. And it had really been the Mal Swanson show. And we knew that Smith was going to come in and do good things. But in the first 30 minutes, when the United States had trouble building up the ball and finding their forwards' feet, Smith is one that looked for the ball, dropping back into those deep midfield spaces just to get touches on it, just to collect it at her feet. I was really impressed with Smith and her off-ball movement to try to get the ball and try to win it back, knowing that Alex Morgan was going to continue to stay high and look to get in on the backside. But Smith was a very big bright spot in this game for me. Smith, Gurma, Fox, standouts, and Lavelle. I mean, Lavelle is always a standout. She's always a playmaker. She's always the QB for this team, so she's always great.
No, I'm in agreement with you 100%. You're going to find little variation or difference for me. All standout players. I think even if you're looking from half one to half two, the ones who really, really kind of had an impact in a game like this.